You know, there was a time in the not so distant past where I used to drink. I never had a problem with alcohol, but you know, as a 20-year-old in my 30s, I used to go out on the weekends. Never drank during the week, but I used to go out on the weekends, and I used to throw down. I used to go out and party. I'd go to the bars, go to the clubs, and I'd have a good time. And that was the intention, you know, to go out, have a good time. And when I went out, I just scratched. You see that? Man, I'm definitely off my game. But when I went out, my intention was to have a good time, to party, and to get drunk. I mean, I would get really freaking drunk when I would go out. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to talk about my experience with drinking, why I gave it up, how long ago it's been since I've had a drink, and why I'll never go back. So I think it probably goes without saying that I've got a setup back here that is pretty well equipped for drinking. You know, I've got displays full of alcohol behind the bar. I got a ton of alcohol, got some Maker's Mark. You know, I used to drink this stuff quite a bit. This is kind of fancy though. It's a little bit expensive. So if I was still in the mood to drink, you know, it would be very easy for me to drink. I have tons of alcohol in this house. And the reason I have alcohol in this house is not because I still drink, but because I like to host events for my friends and family. And there are friends and family that still drink, you know, even though I don't partake in that. I do keep it on hand for those occasions. I'm not making this video to make anybody feel bad or to put anybody down. That's not what this is about. If you still like to go out and drink and have an occasional drink and cut loose, that's totally fine. It's your life. Do whatever makes you happy. I'm just going to tell my story because there are some very legitimate reasons why I quit drinking. And, you know, it could be an eye-opener for somebody else out there to make you realize that maybe drinking isn't the best thing for you. I think we all kind of know that deep down. But there were some things in my life that happened, and then, you know, going through what I went through with my health, reflecting back on that, I'm able to kind of understand what was going on with my body and why drinking was actually very detrimental to me, and I didn't even really actually realize it. So if you're new to Apex, my name's Jacob, and the reason this channel exists is because in 2017, I had my health completely destroyed, basically out of the blue, and I was failed by the medical industry. And after about a year of suffering, I ended up taking matters into my own hands, and I eventually fixed myself. And I fixed myself through diet, nutrition, and herbal and natural remedies. So now, you know, coming out clean on the other side, it's been several years now since all that happened. I basically share everything I've learned in hopes to help somebody else out. So let's dive into this topic about drinking, all right? So the first time I ever had a drink, and the first time I ever got drunk actually, was when I was 16 years old. That's pretty young for drinking, but that's what happened. I was at a wedding. It was actually my uncle that was getting married, and there was an open bar. They had a keg there. Me and my cousins and my brother, you know, we thought it was a good idea. Let's jump in on this keg. So that's what we did, and we got fairly drunk. And that was my first experience with alcohol. Now, it was fun. I will say that, and you know, I won't say that I got hooked on it, but I kind of get hooked on the feeling. So after that, my late teens and my early 20s, I drank quite a bit. Now, I never drank throughout the week. I only drank on the weekends. And I would essentially use it as a crutch. You know, I would use it to loosen up, to have a good time. And I never felt like I could fully relax and be myself if I wasn't drinking and I was in a social setting. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that because, you know, I think as we grow up, we're kind of told, you know, keep it down, be quiet, you know, don't be loud, don't stand out, just be another face in the crowd. And we learn those habits, and then we kind of forget how to express ourselves. And that's essentially what happened with me. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. Your actual personality, your emotions and stuff, they get suppressed. And those are habits that you build for yourself. And before you know it, you go out and you're in a social setting and you can't really be yourself. You can't socialize. You can't express yourself freely. So I would use alcohol as a crutch because it really does loosen you up. But the problem with me and alcohol is that I didn't know when to cut myself off. And that's a big problem because I would go out and I would get really freaking drunk. And I would say more often than not, I would get so drunk to where I would be sick. Like I would be throwing up. And there's a lot of times, I mean a lot of times, more than I could ever possibly count, that I would black out. And I wouldn't remember part of the night, half the night, sometimes the entire night. And that's not a good thing, because that means you're basically binge drinking, and it's really, really hard on your body. It's hard on your liver. It's hard on everything. I mean, it tanks your testosterone if you're a male. It depletes magnesium, which is something I'm really going to dive into here in a minute. It's bad on your brain. It's bad on everything. I mean, it's a poison. Alcohol is a poison. So when you're consuming that much to the point to where you black out and you don't remember anything, or you get sick and you're throwing up, that is really bad. So there were a couple times in my early 20s where I got so drunk. It's honestly, I mean, this is no joke. And this is also another topic that's kind of hard for me to discuss, but it's a miracle, an absolute miracle I am still alive today. Because there was one time in particular, I got really trashed, and I was actually at a friend of mine's house. I rented his garage out because I was doing some work on my truck. I like working on like custom cars and stuff. So I was doing some work on my truck in there, and I had been working all day, and then two of my friends showed up and they had a bottle of whiskey, which is what I used to like. I drank whiskey and beer. But they had a bottle of whiskey, a very old Barton, and we played quarters, which if you're not familiar, it's where you take a shot glass and you bounce the quarter and you try and get it in the shot glass. And essentially, I think it's like if you miss, then you have to take a shot. I didn't hit the freaking shot glass at all, so I missed almost every single time. And before I know it, the whole bottle of very old Barton, it was like a fifth, like this size, was gone. I remember like 30 minutes of that night. That's it. And I blacked out. And I remember one small piece after that 30 minutes for like maybe 5 minutes, and I was laying outside in the gravel, puking my head off. And that's all I remember. I woke up the next morning, and I guess my friends had gotten drunk as well. They laid me in the back of my truck in this garage, which was not climate controlled. Now, thankfully, it wasn't like super cold or super hot or anything, but they laid me in the back of this truck, and they thought they were doing me a favor, so they covered me up with black plastic garbage bags. Okay? Now, I could have very easily have got one of those black plastic garbage bags over my face and suffocated and died in my sleep. Because I was so sick. This is another thing. I was so sick that I puked while I was laying on my back. And when I woke up, there was puke everywhere. I mean, like all over my face, in my hair, all over my shirt, you know, underneath my head, like everywhere. I was basically just laying there puking throughout the night, apparently. And how I didn't choke and suffocate and cease to exist is an absolute miracle. The only thing I can say is that somebody was watching over me. It's really hard to look back on that, how close I probably came to dying that night. You know, because another quick story, my mom, when she was an infant, she was in the crib, and there was a fan running in the house she was in. And, you know, back in the day, air conditioners weren't that popular, or a lot of people didn't have them back when my parents grew up and stuff. So, you know, the windows were open, the fan was going, and there was a bag, a plastic bag that was in that room. And apparently the wind came in through the window or something, and it got in front of the fan, and it blew that plastic bag into my mom's crib, and it went over her face, and she was suffocating. And my mom's brother, my uncle, just happened to walk in that room at the right time and pulled that bag off my mom's face. This stuff happens. Accidents happen. If that would have happened, I wouldn't be here. And you know, how the bags that I had laying on top of me, which were all the way up to my neck, didn't get over my face, how I didn't choke on my puke and die in my sleep, is, again, it's an absolute miracle. But you know, that was an eye-opener for me. And I was so drunk that night that the next day I was actually sick for 3 days. It took me an hour to get to my parents' house, and they were right across the street. I'm talking like 300 yards away. I got up, I could barely even stand because I was so drunk. I was so drunk still, I was hungover, I was sick. I probably had alcohol poisoning, honestly. I mean, I really do. I think I had that. And I went outside the garage, and there was a lawnmower sitting out there, like a riding lawnmower, and I sat down on that riding lawnmower and I passed out in the hot blazing sun for like an hour. And then I got up and I finally made it to my parents' house, and I laid in bed and I puked and puked and puked, and I, basically laid in bed for a day and a half trying to rehydrate myself and just get back to some sense of normalcy. And again, I was sick for 3 days after that. So that was an eye-opener for me, but it didn't stop me from drinking. I would say after that, I probably did slow down some, and I was a little bit more wary about, how much I would drink and stuff like that. But I still had an issue as to where when I would go out and I would drink, it was really hard to know when to stop. And that feeling that creeps up when it's like you get in the, I would call it like a groove or something. You get in this groove and it's like a sweet spot. And if you can stay there, that's amazing. You can have a really good time. You can enjoy yourself. You can not get sick. But I always felt like I needed more. So I would always end up getting sick. I would always end up blacking out. And it was horrible. And back then, that was after I got into bodybuilding and stuff. And I would work out all week. I would eat super clean throughout the week. My diet was spot on. I was tracking my food. And I felt like I was super healthy. And then the weekend would come, I'd go out and I'd get trashed. And then the first 2 or 3 days after that, getting back in the gym, I would be off my game. It would hold me back and I couldn't progress. So that sucked. As I got a little bit older, the more I would drink, I also realized that I couldn't tolerate it as well. And I'm not talking about like I would get drunk faster. I mean, I would get hungover after like 2 beers. And that's probably not a good thing either, because I think that's an indication saying that something's not kind of right with you. You probably shouldn't be hungover that fast just after drinking a couple beers. I mean, I remember times where I would drink 1 beer and I would feel like crap, like a few hours later. So I just kind of ignored that stuff, and I would drink. I would go out and I would drink, and I would have a good time. And again, I would use it to loosen up. But reflecting back on this, another time in particular is the first time I had anxiety and panic attacks. When I started suffering from that, I had actually went out and I had gotten drunk the weekend prior to me having those anxiety and panic attacks. All right, so 3 to 4 days later, that's when everything kind of went off the rails. I started having panic attacks when I was at work. And I suffered from that for several weeks before I was able to get medication and stuff from my doctor and kind of get it calmed down. It might have actually been over a month, like a month, maybe 2 months or something, where my anxiety was just out of control. All right, so that happened in my like mid-20s. I think I was like 25 when that happened. It was actually when I was building this house in 2009. So the second time when I suffered from anxiety and panic attacks, which is when my health spiraled out of control in 2017, I actually went out drinking the weekend before that. It was the same scenario as the last time. I went out, I was in Korea, I got really drunk, and a week or so later, 4 or 5 days later, everything with my health started spiraling out of control. My heart started going crazy. I started having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I was under constant anxiety. I mean, like perpetual anxiety that would not go away. And the panic attacks were significantly worse than what they were before. Plus, I was plagued with this abnormal heart rhythm, and also ended up getting really, really sick around that same time. I caught some sort of cold or virus, and that really tanked my health. I mean, I was extremely sick. That was probably one of the worst colds I've ever had. And the reason I think this happened both times, and this is very, very important, is that I think my binge drinking tanked my magnesium levels. And that essentially made my health spiral out of control both times. The first time it gave me anxiety. It gave me panic attacks. I also had an abnormal heart rhythm back then. It wasn't as severe as the second time when my health actually deteriorated, but I was still having heart palpitations and I was getting muscle cramps and stuff like that. And those things are very strong indicators that you have an underlying magnesium deficiency. And looking back on that, knowing what I know now and the symptoms I was experiencing leading up to the events that happened, me suffering from anxiety and panic attacks and all that good stuff, I'm 100% confident that my magnesium levels were already low. And then when I went binge drinking, it tanked them. My magnesium levels were just depleted significantly, which alcohol really does cause. It can drive them down. I've read statistics that it can drive down magnesium levels as much as 500%. And if your magnesium levels are already low, that's really concerning. And the second time, I was suffering from an underlying magnesium deficiency for sure, because I fixed my abnormal heart rhythm. I was diagnosed with supraventricular tachycardia. I fixed that through, number one, adopting a carnivore diet, putting the right fuel in the tank, and nourishing my body with nutrient-dense foods that are very bioavailable, but also magnesium therapy. As soon as I started doing those two things, I saw drastic improvements right away with my abnormal heart rhythm, and I started to resolve that. Now, it did take quite a long time to rebuild my magnesium stores in my body and to resolve that deficiency, upwards of about a year. But that just goes to show you that, my magnesium deficiency was very, very severe. But I'm 100% confident that both times my drinking is what led to those events. And it led to those events because my magnesium levels were significantly depleted. So after going through what I went through with my health, that was the last time I drank. It was December of 2017 in Korea. I have not touched alcohol since, and I will never touch alcohol since. One of the things I've realized is that, number one, life's too short to care what people think about you. We go out and we're like, I can't loosen up, I can't relax because I'm worried about what somebody's going to think about me. I'm worried about what they're going to say. It doesn't freaking matter. At the end of the day, when all this is said and done and we're on our deathbed and we're looking back at our lives, it's not going to matter. Like, what these people say about you is not going to matter. The things that we think are important are just not important. So by adopting that mindset, I was able to really start relaxing when I go out. And now when I go out, and I still go out sometimes with my friends to the bars and clubs, I can relax and I have a better time than they do. I can still talk to people. I can be social. I can act a fool. I can dance. I can do whatever the heck I want because I'm not worried about what some stranger is going to think about me. So, being comfortable with yourself and all parts of yourself and accepting those parts of yourself, even the ones that embarrass you and the ones you don't like, that's super important. And that's what I've tried to do, is just basically adopt that mindset. So just that alone is a big thing that's kept me from drinking, and I really have no need now. And also, like I was mentioning before, when I would drink and I would just feel like absolute garbage, as good as my health is now, I feel absolutely fantastic 24/7. I always feel optimal. It's very, very rare that I have anything other than feeling fantastic, and I don't want to sabotage that. And I know that if I drink alcohol, I will sabotage that because even a small amount makes me feel like crap. It's not optimal for me. I know it's not good on my body. I know it's very hard on my body. It ages you. It's just not good for you. It can lead to fatty liver. It can lead to bad habits. It can lead to depression, anxiety, magnesium deficiency. It can lead to a lot of really bad stuff, and I just don't want to go through that again. So for me, it's just not worth it. I'm very comfortable in my own skin now. I can go out and socialize. I can talk to people. I can have just as much fun as everybody else, but I don't need alcohol. And because I feel fantastic all the time, I don't need alcohol to make me feel better. Because I think a lot of us, we turn to alcohol to enhance our lives. It kind of gives us a boost. It makes us feel good. It's a feel-good drink. But when you feel good all the time, you don't need that. Anything extra is just going to make you feel like crap. It's going to take away what you already have. So if you can get to a place where you feel optimal all the time, you don't need alcohol. And if you can get to the point where you're comfortable in your own skin and you accept all parts of yourself, and you don't worry about what other people think of you, especially not people that you'll probably never see again, then alcohol becomes kind of irrelevant. You simply don't need it because you already feel optimal and you can already express yourself the way you want. And I will say that adopting an all-meat carnivore diet is one of the things that has had a very profound impact on my mental health and has allowed me to reach that point because it's really just cleared up my mind. It's allowed me to be more focused and see things more clearly. And honestly, it's just kind of opened my mind up to see things for what they really are. And that has had a profound impact on the way I view the world. And I will say that I view the world now in a completely different light than I used to. I don't stress about the small stuff. I don't worry about what people think of me. I feel like I can express myself the way I want to. I don't have to hold anything back. I'm very confident in my own skin. And had I not rid myself from all these other toxic foods I was consuming and landed on a diet that is very sustainable, and that gives my body everything I need to thrive and that fuels my mind, I don't know that I would have got there. So all in all, I'm really grateful for the experiences I had with alcohol. I'm glad I went through all that stuff, and I'm happy that I got it out of my system at a young age. And that's an amazing thing, because had I not gone through all that stuff, I might still be drinking to this day. Had I not had my health completely destroyed, I might still be drinking. And you know, at this point in my life, I may not be as healthy as I am right now. So even though those experiences were kind of awful, and that wasn't all of them. I mean, I had a lot of crazy experiences when I used to go out and drink and stuff. I'm really grateful that I did have them, because it's brought me here. It's put me in this position. And at 40 years old, I'm now in the best health of my life, and I couldn't ask for anything else. But if you feel like sharing, you know, drop a comment down below. Let me know what your experience with drinking has been. Do you still include alcohol? Have you cut that out? I'm just kind of curious what everybody else is doing. You know, I've got a lot of crazy drinking stories. I could definitely go a lot deeper on this topic. I used to do a lot of really stupid stuff when I would drink, and that's actually another really big reason why I gave it up, because it's not worth it. It's just not worth it to me. But if you got some value out of this, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. It really helps the channel out, helps push these videos out to more people. As always, I appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, peace out.